This is joint work with Haki, who is at Sabanci. So like, some of you have seen it. Some of you, in particular the organizer of this session, has seen it several times. So I'm afraid he's going to shut me down fast. We'll see. But if you see that your comments didn't make it, now is a good time to like repeat them so that we know you're really serious about them. So this is what this paper is about. So in the last 5 decades, let's say, or 6, we have seen a big rise in the college premium, right? So people that have a college degree, they make much more relative to people without a degree, relative to what it was in the 60s, let's say. And people have also documented that individual wage risk has increased substantially over the same time period. And what we want to do in this paper is we want to think about the mechanism that links these two features. In particular, we want to think about the mechanism in which a rise in wage risk contributes to the increase in the skill premium. And then we want to think about how important this mechanism was or could have been in a kind of accounting for the rise in the US skill premium between the 60s and the 2000s. And one possible way to think about this paper then is that it kind of provides a novel link between 2 different types of inequality. Within group inequality, which is which is wage risk, residual wage risk, and between group inequality, which is the skill premium. Okay. So how is this going to work? So we are going to build a framework which relies on 2 features. First, there's going to be this uninsured individual wage risk that gives rise to precautionary savings, and there's going to be capital skill complementarity. And the mechanism in 2 lines is, well, if wage risk goes up, people are going to respond by an increase in precautionary savings. That's going to drive up investment and capital, and that's going to increase the skill premium because there are capital skill complementarities. Okay?
We have data on the capital stock.
This is what happens in a counterfactual exercise, right? Right? Of course, we want to build a model that is able to kind of, look good in the first place, and then look at the counterfactual in which we only change one thing. So more specifically, we're going to build an incomplete markets model in the spirit of Viagari with capital skill complementarity. I should be up front, so we're going to focus on steady state comparisons here. And then what we are going to do is we're going to calibrate the model to the 1967 US economy. We're going to feed in changes in wage risk and a bunch of other things in order to be able to explain what happened kind of overall, and we're going to compute the skill premium in 2010. Once we do that, we're going to kind of look at or do the counterfactual exercise we're interested in. So we're only going to change or increase wage risk and calculate what the skill premium would have been if that was the only change that happened in that time period.
And so the increase in wage risk is the same for all occupations?
So we're going to have 2 types of guys, skilled and unskilled. And they're going to have 2 different processes, and the wage risk increase has not been the same for these 2 groups of agents.
But this itself does not explain a lot.
That particular thing, that does not, no. That has implications that I will talk about later, but...
Skills here means what?
Excuse me? That you have a college degree. Or, alternatively, that you went to school for 16 years or more.
But this is not the same in the 70s or later, no? The proportion of...
Yeah, right. So we're going to take that into account, right, in the benchmark exercise. There's many more people that went to college today than in the past, which effectively puts a downward pressure on the skill premium, right?
So the key mechanism is about real interest rate, low real interest rate, so capital moving in and increasing skill complementarity, so skill premium. So do we see that in other countries?
What was the thing about interest rates?
The key mechanism is that the interest rate is low, so there are lots of capital coming from Chinese saving in the US, but anyway. So low interest rate, high skill premium because of that.
So we will have an exercise. So we had the international econ session in the morning, but if I have time, I can talk about the open economy extension in which we are trying to model this. And we can, in principle, also quantify what the impact of these capital inflows was. And like you're guessing, right? That's going to have a positive impact in the sense that it will drive the skill premium up. So I want to so in terms of the results, so we find that the benchmark model in which we feed in all the changes that have happened, or the important ones, matches the increase in the skill premium quite well. So the skill premium in the 60s was 1.51. So on average, a guy with a college degree was making 51% more than a guy without a degree. And that's about 90% now in the data. And the model matches that quite well. And if you feed in only change in wage risk, so do the benchmark counterfactual, that's going to, so changes in wage risk only are going to increase the skill premium by 18% between 1967, let's say, and 2010. So from 1.51 to 1.7. Okay.
How do you measure the wage risk?
So we're gonna write a model in which people are subject to a standard like two-dimensional wage process where, yeah. So there's one transitory shock, one persistent shock, and people have estimated, what these processes look like when they use PSID data. So we haven't done it ourselves. We are going to be relying on what other people have estimated. But I'll be very explicit about what that.
It is cross-section or is
Excuse me?
It is cross-section?
Well, it's a cross-sectional identification, yes, in the sense that you use panel data and you estimate the wage process using that panel data structure.
Any risk that is associated with the fact that the economy is changing over time, and then if I'm low-skill guy and I lose my job in 20 years, not considered.
Okay, so I should have been maybe more explicit. So this part, maybe that answers your concern or answers your question, is residual wage risk, right? So you're going to take all observables into account, and you're only going to estimate how residual wage risk has evolved over time. Now you're saying, well, that could have been caused by some things. That's true. So we are not going to be addressing where that came from, if that was the question.
So if you have permanent transitory shock, then you have all the dispersion and volatility, no? Incorporated in the wage risk.
I have what?
Dispersion and also volatility. So you have the cross section and also along the life cycle you're controlling for it.
That's sure. That's where the estimation comes from. We are not going to model life cycle explicitly, right? So life cycle is going to be taken out in a way in the estimations. We will not have, well, you will see, but we will not have life cycle explicitly in the model.
No, I'm concerned because there is a risk on the life cycle. If I was a production worker in the 60s, then I was getting a good job, good salary, but likely now I lose my job.
So that's going to be partly captured by the persistent component in the wage process, right? If you lose a job and you remain unemployed for a while, that's going to show up as a drop in your wage, and that's going to be captured in the estimated wage process, in particular in its persistent component. Now, the question though is, right, whether this risk has changed over time or not, and that's kind of what's important here. Okay, and then. So this is the benchmark exercise. If I have time at the end, maybe not, I will talk about two extensions. If you think about the mechanism I presented or I explained, well, you see that rise in savings by Americans, let's say, translates directly into rise in capital if it's a closed economy. In an open economy, part of these, so now we are talking about the counterfactual, right? Not about what really happened. In the open economy, part of the increase in domestic savings is going to be absorbed by the rest of the world, right? Like Americans are going to be buying Chinese bonds, whatever, right? Now, what that means is that the capital is not going to increase so much, and the channel that I'm talking about is going to be mitigated, right? So we also do an open economy exercise in which we treat the U.S. as a large open economy, and we find that in that case, the skill premium is still going to increase by 11 percentage points as a response to a change in wage risk, which effectively says U.S. is a pretty big country, right? In the sense that if Americans change their behavior, that's gonna change the world interest rate, if you like, quite a bit. And the second extension we have, well, in the benchmark, we think about the fraction of skilled workers as exogenous, not as constant, like you were asking, right? It's different in the 60s and in the 2000s, but in the counterfactual, we hold it constant. We perform an alternative exercise in which we allow people to change their education decisions in response to changes in wage risk. And there is going to be important what Joachim was asking, or you guys were asking, whether people have the same wage processes. If they don't, then like when wage risk changes disproportionately, that might affect people's education choices. So we have an exercise that takes education choices into account. And then, so I don't want to push it too much because I don't think our model of education is great. But in that case, we actually find an even larger increase in the skill premium. And why is that? Well, even though the skill premium goes up, wage risk for the people that have a college degree increases so much more that actually fewer go to college. And if fewer go to college, that pushes the skill premium further up. But that's just a quantitative result, right? We have simulations in which the opposite happens.
So let's say we start with just a production function that has capital skill complementarity. I'm going to feed the capital and observe the data.
Yeah.
And I don't ask where it's coming from, etc.
Right.
How much that, and you feed in the actual college versus non-college shares in
Yes.
the US. How much that reduced from exercise is going to explain on the skill premium? Because that's the upper bound of what you could do.
So that's,
And then you can ask how much of that you're doing.
well, well, this is what Kursel and co-authors did, right? So when they estimated, they kind of estimated a production function using exactly the same method you're saying, right? So I'm going to take the observed capital series, skilled, unskilled labor, and I'm going to ask which production function can explain the behavior of the skill premium and other things, right? And we are going to rely on that estimation. But in principle, we are asking where did these changes?
I understand.
Right.
So if you just take the first exercise without asking where the capital,
yeah, then you can do perfectly well.
you can put perfectly.
Yeah.
You can match 100%.
Well, well,
Is that one of the moments you're targeting?
we are not targeting that. You mean in no?
Other paper.
Oh, those guys. Ah, yeah, sure.
Okay.
So they are using the skill premium time series as one of the
Target. Okay.
as one of the estimation targets. Yes.
But in the literature, one of the conclusions is that skill bias technical changes explains much larger fraction, fraction of the skill premium than skill complementarity.
Well, skill bias technical change on its okay. Let me see. Where is this? Oh yeah. So we're gonna feed in skill bias technical change. What that's gonna do in this model is, and then I don't know how skill bias technical what it means that skill bias technical change explains something and capital skill complementarity doesn't. In this model, they kind of work together, right? If you have skill bias technical change, so price of computers goes down, meaning people are going to buy more computers, and these computers are going to benefit more the skilled guys. But that's the capital skill complementarity. Without something of that kind, just skill bias technical change, what is that? I mean,
Usually it's a production function, two types of workers, and there's something, right? You don't even think about capital, you think cuts.
Okay.
Right. That would be like the basic.
Yeah, so fair enough. Yes. So fair enough. So in this world, skill bias technical change, if you like, or skill bias technical change is induced by endogenously by changes in technology. But okay, I was gonna say, you're right.
You can't rewrite the Katz-Murphy equation
into this. So what I wanted to respond though, in this model, these factors are going to be extremely important. So like skill bias technical change or changes in technology, if you like, are going to be these guys, and these are going to be the most important drivers of the skill premium. But we are saying there is another channel that people didn't think about that's also quantitatively important.
I don't think you answered this question about the upper bound.
About
The upper bound. So you could feed in your model whatever production function you're using a series of capital in the data, and that will be the upper bound of what you can get. I think
that's not true. Like, what do you mean by upper bound? Upper bound of what? If
capital increase. So he's saying this is a story about Y capital.
Oh, I see what you mean.
That's all they're saying.
Oh, you're saying, well, if your mechanism was explaining more than 100%, that would be weird.
Yes.
No, that's not true actually. Because there can be, I'm doing a counterfactual in which I leave a bunch of stuff out. If I put that stuff back in, if you feed in only a change in technology, you're gonna get a brutal increase in the skill premium. Then you put in changes in skill supply, brings it back down.
Let me explain what people are confused about. It's about the mechanism story you told.
Okay.
Mechanism, if you go back to that, what you said was, oh, it goes up because the capital stock went down.
Oh, here.
Yeah. And what they're saying is, in the data, the capital stock didn't go up. The capital output ratio is roughly the same. So how, in your model, can you get a rise in the skill premium from your mechanism? In the end, your answer is, in your counterfactual, the capital stock would have gone up by a huge amount, and so therefore the skill premium would have gone up.
You can think about it that way, yeah.
What other way is there to think about
Okay, that's what I.
No, yes, I can think about it.
But that's what I. That's what I already said to you because you were concerned about this. And I said this is a counterfactual, right?
No, I fully understand. All I'm saying is that in the data, the capital stock didn't go up.
Then, okay.
In spite of that, the skill premium did go up, and so they're all puzzled about why it is that.
Oh, but that's not true. Capital stock did go up.
You said the
Capital
point of
appreciation.
separate structures versus
Yeah.
equipment.
Overall capital didn't. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Capital
Correct.
output ratio changed.
Correct.
Capital equipment.
Let's keep going. I think because now it's going to become clear. You're right, and I should have said that probably. So this is going to be a model. You marrying Ayagari with capital skill complementarity, a specific form of that. So it's going to be an incomplete market model with the government measure one of workers and a firm, and there's going to be two types of capital. So that's important. There's going to be in the counterfactual as well as in the real world, right? There was reallocation from structures to equipments because equipments have become cheaper. There's going to be two types of labor, skilled and unskilled guys. This is going to be the production function, so it's going to take structure capital equipments, skilled and unskilled labor, and so we're going to rely on Crucell and co-authors for the estimates of elasticities, and what they find in the data is what they call equipment capital skill complementarity. So that means that the skill premium, or the ratio of the marginal products of labor, is going to be increasing in equipment capital, but independent of structure capital. So you will get a skill premium increase, even if capital stays the same, as long as there is reallocation from here to here. And that's how skill bias technical change is going to work here. So the representative firm is just going to solve a standard problem, hire workers of these two types, rent capital to maximize profits. Now, so now how do we think about skill bias technical change? So if you think about aggregate feasibility, it's going to be consumption plus government expenditure plus like next period's capital equals to output plus depreciated current capital. And there's this parameter Q, right, which is the price of equipment in terms of the consumption good. And if this goes down, and people have documented it has gone down, that's going to induce skill-biased technical change, endogenously if you like, because people are going to buy more equipment capital, and that's going to increase the skill premium. Okay? So this is what we are going to have. So now we're going to have a government, which is going to have some spending G, and they're going to have some debt, and they're going to finance that with linear capital income taxes. So we allow for these two different types of capital to be taxed at different rates. It's not that important, turns out. We're going to have a nonlinear labor income tax schedule, and like we talked, or somebody was talking about earlier, that's potentially important for us because it's going to imply partial insurance, right? So when risk changes, we want to be able to, the agents should kind of get the benefits of larger insurance coming from progressive taxes. So this is what the government budget constraint is going to look like in stationary form. So these are the spendings, right? So they have some expenditure, they have to repay debt, they issue new debt, they get equipment capital tax revenues, structure capital tax revenues, and labor taxes. So this T is just a complicated function that depends on everybody, how much everybody is paying. Okay. So now we have the depreciation of people here. But it's the other way around. So people are going to survive with probability delta. So in each period, 1 minus delta guys is going to be born with no assets. So for simplicity, that makes it very tractable. We're going to assume that there is no accidental bequest. So when people die, it's stochastic, right? So there's going to be some assets left behind, and we're going to distribute them among the survivors. So this is the same as if you assume that people had actually fair life insurance. So we'll not give it to the new guys, we'll give it to the old guys. In the benchmark, people are going to be born skilled or unskilled, which is going to be exogenous to kind of replace the guys who died. And pi I is going to denote the fraction of people of a given skill type. Okay? So now, every period, each guy is going to draw some productivity shock, Z, which is going to imply that his wage rate per unit of time is going to be WI, which is the wage rate per efficiency labor unit, times ZI, which is the number of efficiency units this guy can produce in one unit of time. And WI, is also going to be the marginal product of labor that comes from the firm problem. And somebody was asking earlier, I'm going to be more specific about that. We're going to allow for the process for Z's to be different for the skilled people and the unskilled people. Okay, so now these guys are choosing these stochastic sequences to maximize expected utility from consumption and labor. So we are going to have endogenous labor again, because it allows for partial insurance. It's potentially important to think about what happens when people's risk change. They can respond with labor supply. So this is what the agent's problem is going to be.
You mind so far not really in the literature, how this model is similar or different from the
so you can think
first models, and there's like Violand, Violand,
oh, the Korf paper that I was mentioning. So you can think of this model as Ayagari with a different production function, namely with a production function that has the capital skill complementarity. And as far as I know, so people have thought about these capital skill complementarity things in other environments, but in an incomplete markets model, I don't think it was done before.
But isn't the right answer that you want to explain the endogenous evolution of capital, which Korf doesn't do?
Yeah, that would be one way to.
That's what you're doing, right?
In principle,
I think it's
you think that's a bigger potato?
I think so. But I mean, that's a paper referring to Angel.
Yeah.
It came from nowhere. You're saying actually there is a process I can explain through, and they don't have a household.
Yes.
Right?
No. It is an accounting exercise.
Yeah. They said I am going to explain to you part of the rising capital for this model that you all said.
That would be one way to think about it, and we would not only explain, but we could in a way also decompose into which part comes from skill bias technical change, which part comes from here, and so on. Changes in taxes. So I'm not going to show you any of that, but it could be computed, of course, yes.
That's what I'm saying. So you could just do what would happen under complete markets because Q is going down.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that does all the work. That's the question maybe Nate is anticipating, right? So that's a very easy, we can all solve that,
Yeah. Just getting the evolution of the capital stuff. You don't
That's a
need
good.
all the Ayagari
That's a good.
machinery.
That's a good.
benchmark at least to think about.
Here's the problem.
Yeah, maybe.
The whole mechanism he wants to focus on is disappear.
Right.
Oh, exactly.
Oh, incomplete markets. Oh, that's of course. But he thought.
State,
That's
marginal
why you
part
can't
of
just
capital.
claim.
But I think what he's saying is, if you do that exercise and you show me that does not work, then that's going to make this exercise more credible. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm saying computers have become cheaper. Right? The representative household will also accumulate.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good point. We haven't done it, but it'd be interesting to do.
Papers by Paravan on endogenous human capital accumulation. It would be good to map this to the literature.
Okay. More. I see. Okay. How are we doing in terms of time? Chris, time?
20 minutes.
Okay, good. So these agents, they are choosing consumption, labor supply, and assets to maximize current utility plus expected discounted utility.
Why do you put a sub index on I on E?
Okay. Well, because they face different wage processes, but they are both rational agents. These expectations are taken with respect to different probabilities because we have these two guys, skilled, unskilled, and their wage processes are different. Okay, fine.
Should not have it.
Okay. So the budget constraint is standard. These guys eat assets next period, labor income net of taxes, plus after-tax capital income. Here's this delta guy, the survival probability that tells you that you get the assets of the guys who die. So in principle, we have three assets in this world. There's government debt, there's structure capital and equipment capital, but there is no aggregate risk, which I guess I didn't say. So they all have to pay the same return in equilibrium.
No price change in the equipment price. Today's price as well as tomorrow's price.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a stationary equilibrium in which Q is not changing, but still you have it like you buy at Q. That's why it shows here in the denominator.
You have a
So what we are going to do is we're going to calculate one steady state for like 1967 at which Q was at some level, and then another steady state at which yes. Okay. Fine. So before I move on, so I just want to emphasize. It's probably simple, but let me emphasize once more. So when labor income risk goes up, people are gonna respond by increasing their precautionary savings because markets are incomplete. Now, as savings go up, the stock of equipment capital is going to increase, and as the stock of equipment capital increases, the skill premium is going to increase because of capital skill complementarity.
So did this higher labor increase to generating this with the transition matrix or the possible points that the productivity can take? Are you increasing dispersion in these possible draws of productivities, or is the transition matrix?
Mechanically, what we do is the transition matrix stays the same, okay, but we are changing the states in the state space, if you like, because this is essentially. Let's talk about it afterwards. What Rovenhorst gives you, the Rovenhorst method.
For this mechanism, why do you need the people dying?
We don't, but once we want to go to an environment in which people choose education, we want people to be born into this world, so that they choose which whether they're going to be educated or not, right?
Now you're comparing two steady states, no?
Right, but I want to have a model once I go to endogenous education in which there's a sensible education decision, when people make it at the beginning of their lives, right? So I want to be able to model that.
No, that's true, but in some sense, if you were in 1967 and you told me Q was going to keep declining,
yes,
that would probably overwhelm this risk a lot more. I mean, the increase in risk. I would have. You're going to get weird results in terms of.
So that I cannot answer because we haven't fully solved for the transition. But if you look at this time series of Q, it is. It declines, right, steadily, but it's not a smooth decline, so there's some risk associated with that. Plus, these guys, they don't live forever, right? They die with some probability of 2% or whatever. But you're right, that thing would show up. So once you tell people Q is going to be going down, guys, from now on, there's going to be a big incentive to get educated. But in the endogenous education model, we think about people making the education decision when they enter. So I guess we would not allow people that are in the labor market to, when this new information about Q arrives. But that would be important to, yeah, okay, thanks. We need to think about that if you go that route. Okay. So what do we want to do? So we want to calibrate the model to 1960s, and then in a way we do want to check whether the model is a good model to think about the skill premium. So we're going to feed in the bunch of changes that happened between 67 and 2010 and calculate what the model implies for the skill premium in 2010. And then we are interested in our counterfactual. So we're going to feed in the changes in wage risk only and calculate the skill premium. Okay. So this is the production function we're going to use. So the structure capital is kind of separate from the other things, so that's why it's neutral with respect to the skill premium. Equipment capital, skilled, unskilled labor. So these two guys. Eta and Rho are important because they control the elasticities of skilled and unskilled labor with respect to equipment capital. We're going to take those from the work of Croussel and co-authors. We're also going to take the structure capital share and depreciation rates, and we're going to calibrate this omega and nu which govern the income shares. So now this goes kind of to Nobu's question. Like when we solve for the first steady state, we're going to normalize Q to 1, and it's not going to be changing, right? So these people sit in a world in which Q is constant. This is going to be our utility function, so we want to use this because this is balanced growth path consistent, and sigma is going to control risk aversion, so we're going to use 2 in the benchmark, and we're going to calibrate beta to get, you know, the usual capital to output ratio, or like to get the usual target right, and phi to get the right labor supply on average. So this is the survival probability we're going to use so that people die with probability 2.2%, so that they work on average 40 years. And in the 60s, the fraction of people with a college degree was low, right? It was 13.5%.
Can I ask just a clarifying question on the previous slide? So do Corv have an omega and nu that they use?
Yeah, they do. It's exactly the same thing.
And so are you going to use the omega and nu of Corv?
We try to get it out of these guys. We try to get it out of
They
them.
wouldn't tell you what it is.
Well,
Or
this
it's
is...
not, sorry, it's not publicly in the
It's not in the paper.
Got it.
But that has too much income shares.
Yeah. So we are calibrating these guys to match income shares effectively. But like, he would be asking like, then he would ask, but you get the same numbers as they do.
I want to see
and I don't know.
calibration strategy look
No.
what they...
I don't know. These two guys are part of the parameters that they are estimating jointly, right?
Agreed. I was surprised that they're secrets.
In a version of the paper, we said that they don't estimate them. So we have to calibrate them ourselves, and then somebody told us, but they do estimate them, they just don't report them. So now, this goes back to some of, maybe this should have been earlier, but this goes back to some of your questions, right? So we're gonna assume, and we're gonna follow a recent paper by Hong and co-authors, that skilled and unskilled people have like different income processes, but that log productivity consists of two components, a persistent component and a transitory component, right? Where what's important is going to be the volatility of this guy, and the persistence of the persistent component, plus what they also give us is the variance of the persistent component of entrance, right? So you can think of that as like when you enter the labor market, you get some initial draw that starts your persistent component. And they follow Heathcote, Rojas, and Violante in the estimation procedure. All they do is they do it separately for skilled and unskilled, and they give you a time series of these estimates, right? Of these variances. So they assume that these variances can change over time, but these things are assumed to be constant over time. And this is what these values are in the 60s. So you see, okay, there's not much to. Albert will ask, what am I supposed to see here? Maybe so. So I don't know. What are you supposed to see? Unskilled people's risk in the 60s was a little bit higher than for the skilled, right? Both of these numbers are higher than these, but the differences are relatively small. Okay. So now,
So you're going to use their estimates for the change in labor risk, or?
Yes.
I see. So they have similar numbers for.
So they have. We are using what these guys estimated. These are the estimates for these two lines for the 60s, and they go all the way until 2010. So that's what we're going to use for the kind of second steady state.
Because the skill premium starts to rise in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
It continues. Do you see also a continuous rise in the risk? That's what I asked.
Ah.
Otherwise,
So
more of a recent thing, and then you might say, well, something else was happening in the 70s and the 80s.
Well, there was something else was skill bias technical change, right? That was happening throughout, and that was very important for the skill premium. What was also happening is that the skill supplies were changing over time. So,
if you just show this
yeah, fair enough. I don't remember.
I don't know what it looks like when you separate skilled and unskilled, but definitely when you pool them, there's an increase in the persistent component variance from the 80s.
Oh yeah, but I think he's asking whether this was like a steady growth or it's
steadily increasing from the
okay.
80s to the early 2000s.
Yeah,
if you
but
pool them.
he's worried about the 70s.
Yeah.
I don't know about the 70s.
I mean, that's what started this literature, right? In the late 80s, they said, well, look from the 70s, all these GIB, and everyone's going to college, and skip review. So, it's fine. This might be part of the process, but it might be something else. What useful just to understand the time.
Okay, fair enough.
So, why not the variance of theta for entrance and epsilon?
Excuse me?
Why not the last two rows to adjust them to fit the data?
These two?
Yes. Is there some reason to think that they are constant?
Well, I mean, in these estimations, you make some identifying. You need to make some assumptions in order to be able to identify. Right? If everything is changing over time, then I guess you will not be able to jointly like identify these things. So this is kind of what they use and what Heathcote and co-authors used. I don't see anything, man. Oh, 10. Okay.
Because if I use the last two, I will have less savings, right? Or you will go
Yeah. So yeah, the only answer I could give you is if I did it, which I didn't do, maybe I should. And if you relax that assumption, whether it would be reasonable to think that this has changed.
there's more dispersion.
Right. More heterogeneity versus more risk. We were thinking about an exercise in which we would attribute like all. So here, this is kind of an extreme assumption that all the heterogeneity comes from changes in risk. You could have the converse, right? You could say, well, what if all the changes in the variation in incomes comes from here, from initial heterogeneity? But so I don't know what would happen because we haven't been able to run that in our model. Okay, so let's speed up a little bit. So we're going to have a progressive labor income tax schedule, which is similar to what we saw in the morning. So taxes are going to be a function of income. This guy, tau L, is going to control the progressivity of the labor tax code. 1 minus chi is the average tax rate. Capital income taxes are going to be in the 60s, 57% for the structure capital returns net of depreciation, 50% for the equipment capital returns. Government expenditure 16% and government debt 25% in the 60s.
Use something more recent than our back 3.
Huh?
Should use something.
But these are supposed to be capital taxes in 1967. So we will have.
Right.
Okay. So then there's a few parameters that we are calibrating within the model. So that's the 2 production function parameters, the 2 preference parameters, and this guy, the average labor tax, which we are setting so that the government budget balance is here.
What capital is that?
Yeah. So capital to output ratio is like all capital but net of housing. So housing is taken out. When you take it out, like it decreases output, but it decreases capital more. So that's why this number is maybe smaller than what you used to.
Separate the two because after your study was an equipment.
Huh?
Don't you want to separate the two because after your study was an equipment?
Well, this is in what sense? To match like equipment capital to output ratio, for instance.
Have the case structures going up perhaps too. I don't know. Is that what you have? What going up?
Yeah, that's good. So we haven't done it. That's a good point. We looked at the evolution of like structures and equipments. Turns out in value, so if you look at the ratio of Q times KE over KS, that's relatively stable in the data as well as in the model. But we haven't used it as a calibration target. But that would, in some sense, put more discipline on the behavior of the skill premium. Thank you. Okay, so what happened between 60s and now? So this is maybe the most important because this is what this paper is talking about, and it shows you how these variances or how these estimates change between the 60s and 2010. So these are the transitory components. So they have gone up for both guys, both the scaled and the unscaled, the variances of the transitory components. A little bit more for the scale. What's kind of important here, more important, is that this is the variance of the persistent component, right? Which, if you remember, it has like a very high persistence of like 0.98. That has gone up substantially more for the scaled than for the unscaled, okay? Which is important for some of the results. Okay. What else happened? Lots of stuff. So the price of equipment went down from a normalized value of 1 to around 0.15, 0.16. There's many more people that have a college degree. So it's more than twice as much as in the 60s. So this is what Cherry was saying. So for 2000 for the 2010 we use more recent estimates. So these capital taxes have gone down over time. Now government debt increased we have like 25% to 36%. Why this is small, right? The 36%, because this is a closed economy exercise. So we are excluding all the Chinese holding US debt. So that's why this number is relatively small. And the rest of the parameters is going to remain exactly the same. So these are all the changes that we are going to feed into the model.
Actually do it the other way around. There's a sense in which in your model, what you mean by government debt is what the country owes to government and the rest of the world. So in some sense, that number has gone up.
Well, but we were worried that, one thing that's going to happen is government debt is going to be like kind of like crowding out private capital here, And we want to make sure that we are kind of,
Not really crowding it out very much. Approximately crowding.
yeah,
Maybe, I don't know.
yeah, okay, maybe we can talk about it later. Okay, so now what happens in this model? So now so the first thing that this model does is that once you feed in all the factors, it matches the changes in the skill premium quite well. So that's kind of like a flip side, maybe, of the coin of saying, well, you are kind of consistent with Corf and you are getting the aggregate time series approximately right. So the skill premium has gone up in the data from 1.51 to 1.9. In the model, it's almost the same. Okay, so having done that, we look at what is the contribution of changes in wage risk here.
I'm sorry, is the flip side saying that you match exactly the capital?
No, because we haven't. No, we haven't properly checked it, so I cannot tell you. This is like it doesn't have to be because there's also labor, right? So there's like the two types of capital and the two types of labor.
But
So
you're fitting shares in the data.
we are fitting shares in the data to some extent, not exactly, because so in this exercise we changed some stuff, but we didn't change the parameters of the production function.
That's what I'm asking, because I think you are.
No, but the labor share stays constant in this model. There's like one feature of this model that labor share is going to stay constant. So we will, for instance, not be able to get the decline in the labor share, unfortunately.
Okay, fine.
If we did,
forget about that for a second.
Okay.
And I think you can ask another interesting question: is how much of the rising capital comes from the increase in risk?
Ah, okay,
That was the
yeah,
question that was
yeah,
asking the
yeah,
lecturer.
fair enough.
Not only about skill premium, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that would be interesting.
Okay.
So just to clarify, did you change the Q? So the Q
Yes, yes. So I'll tell you a little bit of that on this slide, actually. So when you change risk only, the skill premium is going to go up to 1.7, whereas this is what it is in the full model. This is in the data. So where does it come from? So changes in risk are going to imply a 20% increase in equipment capital in particular, which is going to lead to the fact that the skill premium increases. But if I remember correctly, I might be, aggregate capital in this world goes up by a factor of about 2. So it increases by 100% approximately. So this channel is going to be somewhere around 20%.
The increase in risk preserves the mean? Or,
Yes, yes. So if it did not, then we would have to worry about like redefining the skill premium. So now I should be, I don't know, maybe I should be honest or something. So what's going to happen here in this model is that, of course, the order of decomposition matters, right? You change a bunch of factors. The way you order these changes is going to affect how much is going to affect the contribution of each factor. So here we do the alternative. So we feed in all the changes, but the changes in risk. So this would be like, it's not the exercise you wanted, unfortunately, right? Like the complete markets. But it says, well, what if you forgot about changes in wage risk? How much short of the overall effect you would come? And so you would like miss these 12%, right? Because this is the full model. So these 12 percentage points would be attributed to the changes in wage risk if you put wage risk last, which is less than in the if you put wage risk first. Okay. Okay.
Same with the Q?
Excuse me?
You do the same with the Q?
You could, yeah. You mean like, so, you mean, let's say this one. This one.
Is that one? That one you change?
No. Are you saying you want that exercise in which you only change Q? Well, but you know what's going to happen.
Well, I want to know how much. Everything else?
It's the skill premium. This is the education technology race, right, of Tinbergen. If you only change technology, education doesn't respond, then the skill premium is going to go up to 3.5 or something of that kind. But then, since more people went to college, right, this is going to drive the skill premium back down. So notice that I'm never saying that this explains a certain percentage, right? Because then the technology alone would explain 300%, right?
So if these more, they will explain more.
Sure, technology only is going to be the most important driver. If you put in changes in skill supply only, it's going to bring the skill premium down to like 0.6. So there's a recent paper by Kabolsky-Rojas, and they talk about exactly the same thing. And they kind of come up with like some way to decompose it in presence of these things that imply changes of more than 100%. Okay? So, yeah, so this is my co-author. I think he's more of a theorist. So he wants to know how everything depends on risk aversion. So it does. The point is that the mechanism is going to be quantitatively important for a wide range of sigmas. Of course, more important when sigma is higher. Okay, so I think let me skip that because he's showing me a 0. But I think that's fine. So I showed you a paper in which we present a new mechanism through which inequality leads to a different type of inequality. So wage risk affects the skill premium. And I tried to argue that this mechanism is quantitatively important because it increases the skill premium by a substantial amount. And then, which I did not show you, but I told you at the beginning, it's also important, albeit to a different degree, if we treat the US as an open economy or if the labor supply is endogenous. Thank you. You have to say something.